I was recently having a conversation with one of my sisters about how funny it was that the Death Eaters in the Harry Potter franchise could immediately locate who Harry was, whether there were people wearing disguises or whether he was invisible, because he used the Expelliarmus spell. And they're like, that's a signature spell. No other wizard other than Harry Potter would ever use such a useful spell. Oh, and why is it that they thought it was him? Well, because he seems to be the only character who loves to go back to this catch-all spell again and again and again. It's a neat, funny moment for the audience, for the characters, when they realize, oh my gosh, yes, Harry has been using the spell all the time. Kind of like JK Rowling being like, yeah, it's one of my favorite spells, I'll admit it. And obviously, because Voldemort and all of his followers are trying to study up on how they can murder him, they've learned enough about Harry at this point to realize, yep, if someone uses that spell and you're wondering where Harry is, it's probably him. And so, hey, it's a great meta moment. It gives a little bit of levity to a scene that is pretty dark and intense when it's happening in the 7th book. However, it made me think, wait a second here. Could this just be JK Rowling at the very end of her series kind of admitting in a tongue-in-cheek way that she's been a little bit lazy? Or is this actually some fantastic writing? Well, I will at least give her the benefit of the doubt and say this is a good scene. I enjoyed it. However, I think that it is way more likely that she, just like many of us authors, tend to get a little bit lazy. That there's sometimes things that we really enjoy writing for some of our characters, certain signature moves, that we become blind to all the other abilities and talents that our characters have at their disposal. So let's talk about that a little bit here. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and in this video I want to talk about all of the spells that Harry should know and that Harry could have used against any of his enemies to help it make it easier for him and his friends to defeat Voldemort and his dastardly villains without having to resort to the Expelliarmus spell at every single flippin' moment. Now, there are a ton of different spells that can be used in all varieties of ways. Anyone who's played Dungeons & Dragons will realize that you can take a rather mundane spell or a rather low-level spell and utilize it in an inventive way to do some amazing stuff. However, when we're going to look at combat capabilities, we're going to stick with spells that very clearly can be utilized for combat purposes, not for setting traps, not for getting the Death Eaters to do things that you would not expect, and because this is Harry, we're not going to have Harry casting any of the unforgivable curses, as easy as it would be to use that in order for him to win the day. Now granted, Harry did use the Cruciatus Curse against Bellatrix Lestrange right after Sirius Black had been killed, and that was because he was so enraged, but as we also realize is that he needs to really want to hurt someone in order to get the most out of that particular spell. You must enjoy causing other people insane amounts of pain, and because that isn't Harry, we can move that spell off to the side, and even when he had the opportunity to use Avada Kedavra, you have to really want to actually murder someone. Not for self-defense, not for the good of everyone. You actually want to do something that's going to harm and break your soul. So, because that's not Harry, again, none of the unforgivable curses. So, beginning in alphabetical order, let's talk about these spells, beginning with apparating and disapparating. Here's the thing. In the movies, you have all of these characters whooshing around as little bits of cloud casting spells. That was a fun thing for the movies to do, but in all honesty, based on the books, that's not what happens. You literally disappear and then reappear somewhere else. And if you really knew how to use this spell, you could completely just run circles around other people and hit them with all kinds of stuff. Literally, you don't even need to hit them with other spells. You can take a frying pan and start apparating, disapparating all over the place and bashing Death Eaters over the head with a frying pan and knocking them out, and they would have nothing that they could use against you. So apparate could be probably one of the most devastating spells that could ever be used, and all you need is a skillet.
Frying pans! Who knew, right?
Now then, 2 spells in the B category that are actually phenomenal. I don't understand why these aren't used more, especially because we know that Ginny can use them to great effect, at least the first one, the Bat Bogey Hex. Turn people's boogers into bats and have them torment them? Imagine the chaos in the middle of a fight if you were to turn all of the Death Eater's boogers into bats. Unless they just blew their nose ahead of time, you suddenly have bats attacking people's faces, making it easy for you to hit them, and then you can hit them with this big buster, the Bombardo spell, which creates a massive explosion. Now then, you don't even need to aim to kill anyone, you just aim into the middle of the group, cause an explosion, throw them all around, break some bones, cause some lacerations, concuss them a little bit, and then start going around slapping the magical handcuffs on them that prevent them from disapparating. Hallelujah! You just took out a bunch of people using 2 spells and you didn't even have to give away your identity with your signature spell, Harry. Then there's the Confundo charm. This is a fun little one because you can just confuse a bunch of people. If you are against violence, just use Confundo! And then people are going to wonder, wait, why am I even here? And then you can just walk away and not even have to deal with any of this. Then there's the Defindo charm, which you can use to precisely cut things. Now then, this is different from Sectum Sempra, where you're able to slash people into little bits with your wand. Defindo is about cutting up material. You could use Defindo to slash someone's wand if you wished. Or, you know what, let's just trip them on up. Whoosh, there goes your belt, and now you're tripping over your own pants. Whoosh, there goes your mask. Now everyone knows that you are a Death Eater. Ha! Take that, Malfoy. But let's not forget other useful spells such as Engorgio, which causes rapid growth in the targeted object. Imagine if you made someone's wand so big that's basically a massive cannon, and from what we know, these wizards aren't working out. They're pretty wimpy, so you can flatten someone with their own wand, trip them up in their own robes. This is a really simple spell that will cause all kinds of chaos, and no one is expecting it because they're all about that Crucio and about that Avada Kedavra and Imperio. If all that they're casting are the unforgivable curses, these guys are not expecting you to hit them with softball stuff that is absolutely going to wreck their day. Now, one curse that I would love to see used more, however we know that this one is pretty destructive, is to use Fiend Fire. However, me personally, being the pyromaniac that I am, I would tell Seamus Finnegan to use Fiend Fire and just watch the fireworks as you would wipe out all of the Death Eaters with his absolute chaos. And because it is not one of the unforgivable curses, hey, you can get away with it. It's perfectly legal. And then we got this nasty one right here, Furunculus. The Furunculus curse is the one where you cause someone to break out in boils and pimples. And just imagine doing that to a bunch of people who are on guard. You just now you are in a complete shame and horror, and you feel absolutely awful. And if you do it strong enough, we know that this stuff is immediately going to rupture, which causes all kinds of issues. And when someone is in complete discomfort, it makes it really easy, again, for you to then apparate with a skill and just bonk them over the head, or do whatever else that you want to do. And because it's not killing them, this is a perfectly legal thing for you to use. But if disfiguring people, burning people, causing explosions, and doing all of this is against your morals, then you know what? Here's a really good one for you. Immobilis, which immobilizes the person. Or you can do another really fun one. Petrificus Totalis. I know I'm jumping a little bit right there in the lineup of spells, but you know what? Immobilis or Petrificus Totalis, boom, you turn someone into an absolute plank of wood. They're not going anywhere. Roll them up in the carpet and stash them away in the closet, and no one's going to know the difference. Here's another fun one, and I love this one from the 4th book, Impedimentia. This one right here allows you to slow down your object, which again gives you the chance to either escape or come up and just punch him in the face. You don't even need to use much spells beyond that. And then there is Incarcerus, which conjures up a bunch of ropes, and if someone is struggling up against all these ropes that are being summoned all across their body, they can't use their wand, they're going to fall on over, and again, you can easily then roll them up in the carpet and stash them away. Incarcerus is a really good spell, and it's one that Harry has seen multiple times used. Why isn't he using this one? And then, if you don't want to use Fiend Fire, but you love the idea of using fire, just use Incendio. Flamethrower! Easy peasy. Ooh, and here's a couple of fun spells for Harry to use. Again, ones that he has seen, ones that he should know how to use. Levicorpus, where you yank someone up by the ankle and you just dangle them in the air. And usually, as we've learned, this spell is so debilitating that people normally lose their wands and lose their heads, and so they can't do much to fight against you. Or Locomotor Mortis, where suddenly now a person's legs are locked together and they have to basically jump on after you. Ha! That's a pretty good one. Or Mucus Ad Nauseum, where now you give someone a completely bad runny nose. In fact, you know what? Add Mucus Ad Nauseum to the Bat Bogey Hex, and you create a swarm of bats that will absolutely wreck the person that you're up against. And all you gotta do is just use these two spells, and there's nothing this person can do as bats are coming out of their nose and attacking them. Yeah! Make this happen! And here's a fun curse to use. This is one that could work even better than Confundo. Obliviate! Completely erase the memories of these Death Eaters. And you know what? Get them to go and live in the Muggle world. That could be the greatest thing that you do to them. You completely erase the memory of who they are and you make them live as Muggles. What could be more destructive to these people than removing their belief as purebred wizards and then making them work flipping burgers at McDonald's? Harry, you should have thought this through a whole lot better. You've lived in the Muggle world. Come on, Hermione. You know that you would have made this happen. Make them live like house elves. Or if you want to go the route of Darth Vader where you're just throwing objects at people, use a Pugno, which directs an object to attack another person. Hey, I'm surrounded by all of these heavy barrels. A Pugno! And just obliterate the person with stuff. Now here's a fun spell, Reducto, where you basically blast something into pieces. Now, we don't exactly know if this spell can work on a person and blast them into pieces. It's hinted that you could do that, which is why I say, why aren't we using this more often on people? You could literally blow them up. And again, it is not an unforgivable curse. Therefore, it's totally legal for a wizard like Harry, who learned how to use the spell when he was 14, to blast Death Eaters into smithereens and never have to worry about them again. Or at least, you know what? Blast their wands into smithereens. Blast away their clothes. That way they're running around naked. Ah! Do something with this incredible spell, Harry. You learned it specifically for the Triwizard Tournament. Why will you not use it again? Oh, come on. Then here's a spell, which I know is going to be a little bit silly. This goes kind of against my rule of what I said, where we're going to try to go for actual offensive spells. But just think about this right here. How many villains does JK Rowling describe as just utterly nasty and greasy and awful? What if you use the Scourgify charm on them, where you clean them? Imagine that to all of these nasty characters who just revel in their own greasiness and filth. What if you cast Scourgify on them and you absolutely clean them? They'd be so shocked because a massive part of their identity would be absolutely gone. And while they're shocked, you can apparate right behind them with a skillet and bonk, knock them on out. Now, Sectum Sempra is a very interesting spell because this is one that Harry did use in the 6th book and nearly killed Draco Malfoy with it, or at least did tons of damage. And we know that any part of your body that is taken off by this curse, completely severed away, cannot be regrown. This right here is a very destructive curse. It's one that Harry has used and one that he doesn't want to use again. However, I would argue saying, Harry, look, this is a spell where you don't necessarily have to use it on someone's chest or head. Just use Sectum Sempra on their legs, slash away their Achilles tendon. They're not going anywhere. And again, because these wizards and witches have no idea how to actually deal with real physicality, with big physical injuries, they probably don't even know exactly what to do with an Achilles tendon being snapped or slashed, because it seems like the only person who has any idea of how to deal with this stuff is Madame Pomfrey, because even St. Muggo's Hospital seems just absolutely oblivious to a basic human anatomy. So Sectum Sempra can be actually really, really wonderful. Another great spell to use is Silencio. If the villains have no idea how to actually communicate with each other because they can't, because they've all been muted, Harry can get away. Very nice and easy. Hallelujah. Again, you could also silence them and again apparate around with your skill and just bonk the living daylights out of them. Another great spell to use is Stupefy, which is a stunning spell that freezes people and renders them unconscious. Stupefy would be really easy to use. Now, this is one that Harry has used against opponents in the past. However, it would be one that would be nice to see him use more often in order to disarm the Death Eaters who are chasing after him. Rounding off this list are two more spells, one you love and one you probably don't remember very well. Let's start off with Tarantalagra. I'm probably mispronouncing that, so this is obviously a spell that I wouldn't be easily able to cast, but this is one that causes people to dance uncontrollably, which, as we've seen in the books, for Neville, is an absolute pain. It's one that the Death Eaters actually use against him, so why not turn their own medicine against them and make them dance the rumba so uncontrollably that they have no idea what to do? And then, again, makes it very easy for you to then do something to them because they're so caught off guard by the fact that they can no longer move well except to dance uncontrollably. The last one on the list is Wingardium Leviosa. This would be a really fun one because you just levitate someone as high as you want, levitate them 3 stories up in the air, and then drop them down and either knock them out or break some of their ribs. They're not going anywhere after that. Wingardium Leviosa can be absolutely an offensive spell if just utilized with a little bit more imagination to it. Now then, I do get it that the other side has wands as well, according to the very short-lived Minister of Magic, Scrimgeour, who said, look, this is the reason why we just can't simply beat Lord Voldemort, because he also has magic and all of his minions do as well. So it's not so easy as coming up with a neat little dainty spell, casting it, and then boom, your opponent is down. This is why we have dueling going on. Why wasn't this taught more actually at Hogwarts, the whole dueling concept? Yes, I understand, because the kids probably would have destroyed each other, but given the fact that Dumbledore knew that war was coming, I feel like he should have at least taught the older students, the ones who were more responsible, how to duel. That's just me, though. In any case, Harry has a long list of spells that he can use to defeat the Death Eaters without giving him away with his simple Expelliarmus spell. This is where I come in as a writer and say, I think that honestly what happened is that JK Rowling, with her incredible imagination and coming up with all these different spells and everything, had a whole lot of fun, especially in the 4th book, with Harry learning about all these different charms and curses and spells that he could use to help him win the Triwizard Tournament. That was really cool. However, as she got then into the personal drama and the bigger plots and setting up Sirius's death and the reveals about Voldemort's past and then just hunting for the Horcruxes, all of this, she became more focused on the immediate big hurdle in Harry's way rather than focusing on how magic could help him out with a lot of these problems. And that's something that's actually very easy for authors to unfortunately do, where we set up these big things that we're just so excited for these big things that we neglect the little things that we've already established. And this is where you as the author sometimes have to step back and say, okay, so I've set up this big challenge, or there's this big enemy, there's this big puzzle that my heroes have to overcome in some way. Now that I've got this cool idea, but let me step back a little bit and think about, what do my characters actually have at their disposal? What do they already know that might be able to help them in this situation? Granted, it might not be as big or as cool as I want it to be, but might this actually be better? And I will use a scene from one of my own books as a reference. So towards the end of the Monarch Mercenaries' autonomy, the heroes, the pirates, must steal away into this cursed temple that's full of monsters and traps, and they have to figure out these very devious, dangerous puzzles that if they get anything wrong, they die really, really fast. Well, I had this one room that was meant to basically be a setup from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you step on the wrong tile, things are going to go bad, all these kinds of traps are going to be activated, and I was coming up with how two of my characters who can use magic were going to come up with this very elaborate way of overcoming this challenge. As I was writing it, I was having fun, but I thought to myself, is this maybe getting just a little bit too convoluted? I stepped back for a day, I thought about what was happening, and then realized, wait a second. I've got my big Minotaur character, Omegas, the guy who's always carrying around big weapons. And he's been complaining throughout the book that Captain Carsonius never allows him to go all out and blow stuff up. Holy cow, in this moment, I could just have him destroy this entire trap with big guns. Granted, it's not as cool as all the magic I could be using, but I've been having Omegas complain all this time. Omegas needs to actually do something, let him show off his big guns, and it's actually pretty smart to do. So, for this crazy trap-ridden hallway, I just send in the Minotaur with big guns and just blow it all up. Now then, again, it's not quite as cool as characters using magic and strategy to overcome all these traps, but doing it this way, I get to give one character a chance to have a little time in the spotlight, I give him a chance to show off his big guns, and I still conquer the hallway. And actually, by them doing it that way, it becomes easier for them later on when they're running back against all odds as something is chasing them. This hallway is now clear, and they don't have to worry about traps going off thanks to Omegas' big guns. So this is something that I would challenge any author out there, especially if you're dealing with magic and cool gadgets and all different kinds of things that characters have at their disposal to use. And JK Rowling, I would even challenge you to do the same as you continue to build up the Harry Potter universe. I want you to think about what kinds of things your characters already have at their disposal. What do they already know that they could use to help them out in any given situation? One of the things that's just unfortunately really disappointing when you look back through the Harry Potter franchise is that Harry should know a number of spells that could help him out in multiple situations, but he just doesn't use it. Now we can chalk it up to a teenager being caught in the moment, losing his head and not realizing, oh, I can use this charm I once learned and it will then clear things up nice and easy. Or I'm in the middle of a battle and everyone's got a plan until they get their first punch and then Expelliarmus, Expelliarmus, Expelliarmus for days, and hey, who's to really argue because the Expelliarmus spell is what rebounds Voldemort's Avada Kedavra curse, sends it right back at him and then defeats him. And that also because he was not the true master of the Elder Wand. But all of that aside, Harry has all these various spells at his disposal that would make it really easy for him, in a good setting, to just cream all of these Death Eaters and fight his way up to Voldemort, and Voldemort would be like, oh my gosh, I have this whole army at my disposal and this teenager's beating us? Why is that? It's because you only use 3 curses, guys, and because this teenager has actually paid attention to class and has learned this giant repertoire of curses and charms that will allow him to wreck people who can't even erect a simple shield charm, for crying out loud. Also, Harry should use more shield charms, but that's defensive magic right there. We're talking offensive magic right now. There's so many things that these characters could actually put to use that would make the battles way more engaging, way more fun, and also require everyone to use a little bit more strategy. Now then, this does take more time to write. If you have a very precise deadline, if you don't have any time on your hands, then yeah, chances are you're going to forget this stuff and you're just going to go for the path of least resistance with your characters and what cool stuff they have. Or you're going to do the rule of cool and just go for the big thing, which again, the rule of cool is really awesome, but if you use it too often, it then just becomes like the Expelliarmus spell. It's just a cheap one-shot that you use again and again and again, and people come to expect it, and it's not quite as cool again as a character using everything that is at their disposal in order to win the day. So, if you're an author who is dealing with lots of magic or technology, cool gadgets and the likes, if you're dealing with thieves, spies, wizards, whatnot, you want to make sure then that you having your characters utilize everything that they can. It makes them seem way more competent, way more intelligent, and way more skilled and cool because they are utilizing all these things that usually the reader has not forgotten about. And a reader feels more rewarded for paying attention to all of these little tidbits and spells and gadgets and explanations along the way because they come back into play later on in the story and make it all just way cooler. So ultimately, while the Expelliarmus spell is a fun one to see and it looks fantastic on the big screen, Harry, authors out there, utilize a few more spells, please. I think you'll actually find it very rewarding. But with all that being said, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about what kinds of spells, gadgets, whatnot that you are making in your own stories, or am I completely off base with what Harry could actually use against the Death Eaters in a combat scenario? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're looking for some interesting stories, if you'd like to actually see if I pulled off what I said I did in the Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy, a link for that book as well as all the other books I've published is in the description below. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.